Hello everybody and welcome back to this video series on how to make an aircraft in Autodesk Fusion 360. So what we did in the first episode is discuss what the series is going to be about. We also talked about how to select good blueprints, how to edit them, and how to set them up inside Fusion 360. If you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend that you do because what I do from now onwards is highly dependent on what happened in the first video. If you were not able to completely follow what was happening, that's not a problem. I will upload the blueprints cropped onto my website, and I will also upload the Fusion file where you can start off with this position. Okay, so let's get started. So what we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to make the basic structure of the fuselage. So what that means is we're going to be drawing out the outline of the 737's fuselage. We won't be making the windows or the doors or the cockpit just yet. This is going to be purely just the main fuselage. Okay, so let's get started. What we're going to be doing in this one is we're going to be using the T-splines to model the fuselage. I think it's just a little bit more flexible, and at the end of it you can just convert it back into a solid, which is what we're going to do. So this is the T-spline workspace, which is labeled as create form. So we're going to click on this, and you can see that the workspace changed to mostly purple, which is the T-spline workspace. Now what we want to do is we want to create a cylinder. So we're going to create new cylinder. And what we want to do is we want to go to the front view where the front of the aircraft is visible. And we want to draw it on the front plane. Okay, so you can almost imagine that the outline of this fuselage right here is almost circular. So it is elliptical, but we're going to start off with a circle first. So the center of this circle would be somewhere over here. Now, to ensure that we draw this symmetrically, what we're going to do is we are going to take our mouse and place it at the origin first, and then we're going to move upwards. And you can see that it's drawing these turquoise shaded lines to tell us that this is indeed right above the origin. So I'm going to place my marker over here, and I'm going to draw a circle somewhere till there. Okay, and what this is going to do is it's going to place the circle with the symmetry about the origin. So we're going to click on that. And the next thing it wants us to do is, if you go onto the right side, is it wants us to give it a depth. So you can just give it some arbitrary depth right now because we're going to edit this later. Now, one more thing that you want to do is ensure that you have a symmetry to mirror, and we have a width symmetry. So in this case, the width symmetry is outlined in green, which is the symmetry that we want. Okay, so once you've ensured that, you can just go ahead and press OK. Now, what I want to do is take this entire block, right-click, press Edit Form, and I'm just going to move this backwards. Okay, so now there are a few things we want to check. We want to check if this makes sense from the right-hand side, and I think it does. We want to check if it makes sense from the front side. It does. And makes sense from the top side, and it does. So the only thing that's not quite correct so far is just the edges are not touching the fuselage from the top view. And that makes sense because if you look at it from the front side, the maximum height is from here to here, which is the circle that we've created, but on the sides, it's not quite to the same radius. It's going to be slightly smaller, and we're going to edit that. Okay, so the way we're going to edit this is from the top side first. So again, we're going to select everything, and we're going to right-click on it, Edit Form. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on this one over here. And what this allows us to do is just scale it in one direction only. Okay, so we are going to match it somewhere there. And this sort of shows us that our blueprints were set up correctly, because you can see that when I increase the scale over here, it scales it from here equally, and it matches well with the blueprint. Okay, so now we're going to look at this side, and we're going to look at this side, and now you can see that when we scaled it from the top side, it did the same thing from the front view, and it's fixed it. So now what we want to do is make the rest of the fuselage. So what we want to do now is, once you've pressed OK, I want you to double click on the rightmost side of the edge. So double click, and what the double clicking does is it basically outlines the entire ring. Okay, so once we've double clicked that, we want to right click and click on edit form. So now what we're going to do is we're basically editing the edges of the cylinder. I want you to press Alt on your keyboard and then drag the left one onto the right side. And what this does is it basically extrudes another section of the cylinder. Okay, and then maybe we can keep it somewhere over here. And that's, I think, in a good position, maybe somewhere here as well. And if we go on the top, we want to make sure that if there are any adjustments that need to be made, they're made right after the extrusion has been made. So this will get more obvious once we start doing more. Okay, so I'm going to press Alt again and extrude again. So I'm going to extrude it till about here, because this is the point, if we look on the bottom side, this is the point where the curvature starts. So I'm going to end it over here, and again on the top side, making sure that it still fits, and it does. Okay, so every time we extrude, we fix the extrusion on the right-hand side, and then we fix the extrusion on the top side, and then we extrude again. So extrude again, and maybe I'll stop it somewhere here. And in this case, what we're going to do is click on this one, and we're going to just scale it in 2 dimensions. And the reason why we want to do this in 2 dimensions will make sense in a bit. So once you've done that, you can then use the middle one and then readjust to make sure that the curvature is still intact. Okay, so now once we do that, we want to look at the top side, and the top side is still good to go. So now we'll extrude it again, this time again, decreasing it and scaling it in 2 dimensions and adjusting it somewhere here. And now you'll be able to see that on the top, it no longer matches it because the top side also starts to curve. So now again, we want to take the small one and edit it in 2 dimensions. So now we're just going to adjust it till there. I hope this makes sense. If you guys have any problems with this, please do leave a comment and I'll try to clarify. Okay, again, press Alt and drag, and then decrease in 2 dimensions, and do this. One thing you want to watch out for over here is, under no circumstances should you be rotating this. It's very, very important that you keep this vertical, because it's going to make the process of making the end bit a lot easier. So making sure that you're only dragging the left one. Okay, so now on the top again, we want to readjust, and then coming back again, and just repeat the process till we reach the end of the aircraft. Okay, perfect. So I am happy with this. And the reason why we did this in 2 dimensions and not just in 1 dimension is because when we look at the backside now, it's basically scaled everything in 2 dimensions, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so if we look from the top, it looks pretty good to me. If we look from the bottom, from the side, it also looks pretty good to me. So I think maybe we can do 1 more extrusion. No, I think that's good. So we'll leave it off there, and then what we're going to do later is we're going to basically create this arc that you can see with my mouse. But first, let's make the rest of the front of the aircraft. So once you edit the back bits, what we want to do again is we want to double click on the leftmost edge of the fuselage, right click, edit form, and again press Alt and drag so that you can extrude. So I'm going to extrude it over here, because you can see from here, that's the point where it starts to curve again. Okay, and like we said, for the back of the aircraft, we want to do the same for the front, that when we extrude it from the right-hand side, we also want to make sure that it makes sense from the top side. Okay, so extrude again. Okay, then look again on the top, and you can see again there's a mismatch, so we're going to scale it again in 2 dimensions. And do the same again here. And go to the top, adjust, repeat. Okay, look at the top again and repeat. So let's do that there. And maybe I think, because you can see that there's a discontinuity over here as well. So I'm going to take that till there and then make it smaller. Again, like the more you practice, the more you know where to split up your sections of the fuselage. Okay, and then maybe I want to do another one till there. And just resize that. And then do this, and again, do it till there. So now you can see that if you go to the top view, everything matches pretty well, and the same thing when pretty much matches on the side as well. Now, if we look at the front, you can't really fully comprehend what's happening because the front doesn't have the depth that we are looking for in order to fully understand what's happening at the back. Okay, but it makes sense on the side and it makes sense on the top, and that's exactly what we want. So once we're done with this, you can go ahead and click on Finish Form. If you want to in the later edit any of this, you can just go back in time, double click on this purple one in the timeline and edit whatever you want. So now that we're done with this, we should now be expecting a surface body, because what we've done is we took a hollow cylinder and we resized everything in the hollow cylinder. So if you go under bodies, you should see that this is orange, and orange here means surface. And you can still see here that it is indeed hollow. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is convert this into a solid body. And the way to do that is patching it. So if we go to the surface environment over here, and we click on patch, what patch basically does is, if I click on the circle over here, it's created this sort of cap. And if I click on OK, you can see that it's created a surface. And what we want to do is the same thing for the back. So we're going to click on patch again and click on the circle at the back and click on OK. And now what it's done, like I said, is it's taken the hollow cylinder and it's basically put a cap on the front and on the back. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click on stitch, and the stitch basically takes the 3 surfaces. So we're going to click on those 3 surfaces and we're going to press OK. And what this is going to do is it's going to convert the 3 surfaces into one solid body. So when we press OK, you can see that it turned from 3 oranges into one single gray block. Perfect. Okay, so this is looking really, really cool already in my opinion. And what we have to do next is close off the end of the fuselage and the nose of the fuselage. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to create a sketch that will follow the end of this aircraft like this, and then we will loft it onto the fuselage. Now what a loft essentially does is it takes a cross section and it takes another cross section and then it basically merges or blends the two. So that's the method that we're going to be using. So the first thing we're going to do is create a sketch on this back surface. So when you created the patch, it created a surface that basically is vertical. And this is why it was very important to ensure that when we did the T-splines, that every time we extruded, everything was vertical. So we're going to create a sketch on the back side of this. So we're going to create a sketch on that plane right there. And what we're going to do is we're going to split this ellipse in half. And the way to do that again is by drawing a line, hovering over the origin, and then going up. And again, the turquoise line has come again, and that basically tells us that it's going vertically above the origin. So start anywhere from here and just draw a vertical line up. Okay, so now if you press escape, you'll see that the surface has been split into 2. So I'm going to press T again, which stands for trim, and I'm going to trim that line over there, and I'm going to zoom in and trim that line over here. And you'll see why it was important to now split this into two equal halves. Okay, so once we're done with splitting that into half, we're going to finish that sketch. Lovely. Okay, so now we will go to the right side and we're going to create a sketch on the right side of the plane. Now, the reason why this will work is because when we drew the cylinder while making the main part of the fuselage, we ensured that everything was symmetrical about the origin. So now when I draw something on the right plane is already the symmetry plane of the aircraft, which makes life much, much easier. Okay, so now what we want to do is basically just draw a sketch that outlines the end of the aircraft. Now, if you take a line and you try doing that here, it's not going to snap onto the existing point. So what we want to do is project the other body onto the current sketch. So we're going to press P, and we want to ensure that specified entities is selected, and we're going to select that dot over there and that dot over there. And these two dots are basically the dots that we have just created on the other plane. So those are the two ends of the line that split the ellipse in two. So we want that. Okay, I'm going to press P again, and this time I'm going to ensure that bodies is selected instead of specified entities. And we're going to click on this fuselage body and press OK. And what that did is it basically created a projection of the body onto the current sketch. So even if I hide this body, you can still see that the sketch is visible. Okay, so now if I go to create spline and click on control point spline, if I hover over this, you can see that it snaps onto the point that we just created. Okay, so now I'm going to click on that and I'm going to try and closely follow what this is doing at the back end. Okay, so at this point, I would ask you to save this file, because what we're about to do next sometimes causes Fusion to crash. I'm not sure why, but it's very safe to just save it right now. What I want you to do is click on the tangent constraint and click on our new arc that we've just created and click on the purple line. And it did nothing. And the reason why it didn't do anything is because the error over here is saying that there are too many constraints. So here, it's not too much of a problem. All we need to do is just edit this slightly over here so that it's almost tangential. It's not too much of a problem, it's just an aesthetic thing at this point. Okay, we're going to try and do the same thing for this curve. And it gave me the same error. So not a problem. We're going to just edit this point over here so that this is almost tangent to the purple line. Okay, so now what we have is, if we finish the sketch here, is this surface, and then we also have, so we've got one surface from the side profile, and then we've got two surfaces from the back profile. And if I just hide the sketches, because hide the canvas because they're in the way, and you can see this is the shape that we have now. So again, under the surface, we're going to click on Create and Loft. And now we want to be very careful. Make sure nothing is selected right now. The first thing we want to select is the back profile. Then we want to click on this blue arc that we've created. So the surface of the blue arc that we've created. And then we want to click on the other half of the back profile. And you'll see once you press OK, what this does is it creates this blended body that blends the sketch from the side to the back of the aircraft. So I can bring this canvases back and you can see it closely follows the end of the aircraft. All right, so now that we're done with this, we should again be expecting a surface body. So if I hide the main body that we created earlier and we just focus on the one that we've just created, which is the back of the aircraft, it is a surface body. Again, the way to make this into a solid body is by first creating a patch. So again, in the surface environment, click on patch and click on this ellipse. And again, it's basically making that cap for the hollow body. And then we're going to press OK. Now we have two surfaces. So one is the actual body we created and one is the patch. We're going to click on Stitch and we're going to select the two new surfaces that we've created and click on OK. And this is going to give us the solid body from before, solid body of the back end of the fuselage. Okay, so now we want to do exactly the same thing we did for the back, but now we want to do it for the front of the fuselage. So we want to do it for the nose. So again, you want to go to the front plane. Now, when we click on Create Sketch, make sure that you do not click on this plane, but you want to click on that circle. Okay, and the reason is because we actually want to create a sketch on this circle instead of the origin. Okay, so now once we've done that, we're going to click on the line tool from Sketch. And again, we want to make sure that the sketch that we draw is splitting this ellipse perfectly in half. So we're going to go to the origin, and we're going to click on the origin and just press something upwards and just draw another line from the origin downwards, making sure that both of the lines that we've just drawn are vertical. Now I'm going to press T again. So once you're done with the tool, press Escape. Then you want to press T, and then you want to get rid of this line and that line. So again, if you press Escape, once you're done with the tool, you should see that this has been split perfectly in half. All right, so that's step number 1 done. Now we want to go to the right profile, finish the sketch, create a new sketch on the right profile. So again, we're just doing the same thing as we did with the back end of the aircraft. So we're going to press P and make sure that specified entities is selected. We're going to click on that line and that line because those are the lines that we just created. And we're also going to click P again and click on bodies so that it projects the solid body of the fuselage onto the sketch that we're creating. Okay, so like before, we're going to go to Create, Spline, Control Point Spline, and we're going to go to this point. And then we're just going to closely follow the nose. Again, where there's more curvature, you probably want more points so that your sketch is more accurate. Okay, so I'm just going to press Escape and just slightly adjust these till I find something that I like. Okay, I think that looks good. Now, similar to before, I want you to save this right now. And what we're going to try and do is make sure that there's a tangent constraint. Okay, so that was successful. You can see over here that it's caused a tangent constraint, but we can't apply the same constraint over here because in the actual aircraft, this is a discontinuity as well. So once we're done with this, press Finish Sketch. And like before, again, we have 1, 2, and 3 surfaces. So 2 surfaces are on the fuselage and 1 surface is on the side. So again, in the surface workspace, we're going to click on Create, Loft. And from that point onwards, making sure nothing else is selected, you want to click on one part of the aircraft. Number 2 is the side profile we made, and number 3 is the other half. And once you press OK, it's going to create this for you. So I know right now it looks slightly weird and funny, but if you match it with the blueprints, you'll see that it's a very close fit. Now, at this point, some of you may encounter some issues while you were trying to do the loft. In that case, you want to probably troubleshoot. And the way to troubleshoot that error is you want to ensure that when you made the T-splines were vertical. The second thing you want to ensure is that when you create the side curve should not have a length that is too much longer than the width of the aircraft. The third thing you want to try and do is ensure that when you are lofting and when you're pressing the loft tool, nothing else is selected apart from the 3 surfaces. At points, I have made some mistakes where I've accidentally clicked something and I was not able to figure out what went wrong. So just ensure that only the 3 surfaces are selected. If that didn't make much sense and you're still encountering issues, just leave a comment in the comments below, and I will try to help you out. Okay, but apart from that, I think if you follow everything that I did and the way I did it, you should be absolutely fine. Okay, so once again, this nose that we've created is a surface as well. So we're going to hide the 2 bodies from before. And now we're going to focus just on the nose. We want to create a solid body out of this. So again, we're going to patch this, click on the ring, press OK. Now we have two different bodies, two different surfaces. Then we want to click on stitch on the nose and the patch, click OK, and now we have a solid body. Okay, so now you can see that we're pretty much done with majority of the basic shape of the fuselage. So if you scroll around and you think something looks weird, you can go back in time and edit it. And in general, even after completing this, if you think it looks a bit weird, I don't blame you, because we haven't really done any of the windows or the cockpit, and that's why it looks a little bit strange right now. But trust me, once you start adding details, it looks a lot better. Okay, so there are two things you can do now. You can either leave this as it is, or you can go to solid, modify, and combine all the three bodies. I'm going to leave them as it is just because I like it when each part has its own component. Okay, so I'm going to rename this to main fuselage body. And this one is the back end, so we're going to say back fuselage. This one is fuselage nose. And just for consistency, I'm actually going to rename this to fuselage main. All right, so this is the end of this episode. Hopefully all of this made sense. If you weren't able to follow along, I highly recommend trying it out again. If you have problems, leave a comment. I will try to help you out. If you can't and you were still unable to follow, I will leave a saved file up until this point on my website that you can download and then take forward to the next episode. All right, guys, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support me, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.